Why did Russia invade Ukraine? Let's understand the roots of Russia's war in Ukraine. You know, Russian President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly made clear that he considers Ukraine's place to be under Russia's thumb. That was its position from the days of the Russian Empire under Catherine the Great in the 18th century through the nation's shared history in the Soviet Union. In recent years, successive Ukrainian governments have forged closer ties with the European Union and NATO, then sidled back toward Russia, and edged away again. With war, Putin means to settle the direction of Ukraine's future by force. What's the history between the two countries? They share a long common past, dating back more than a millennium to the establishment of the first Slavic state, Kievan Rus, in parts of what are today Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. The territory of contemporary Ukraine became part of the Russian Empire in the late 1700s after periods of rule under the Mongols or Tatars, the Poles and Lithuanians. In 1918, a year after Russia's communist revolution, Ukraine declared independence, but in 1921, the Red Army conquered most of it and Ukraine became a republic within the Soviet Union. The Ukrainian sense of a national identity was sharpened in the 1930s when Soviet policies punishing farmers in the republic who resisted mandates to collectivize produced the man-made famine known as the Holodomor, which killed an estimated 7 million people there. Ukraine regained its independence in 1991 with the collapse of the Soviet Union. Putin's preferred notion, widely derided outside of Russia, is that Ukraine is not a legitimate country, and that Russians and Ukrainians are one people. 2. What's the relationship between the two peoples? Almost everybody in Ukraine understands and can speak Russian. Ethnic Russians are the largest minority group there, making up 17% of the population in the last census, in 2001. The percentage is higher in the country's Crimea Peninsula and in some parts of the east. Some Ukrainian citizens retain sympathy for the Kremlin, though the invasion eroded their ranks. Even before the war, a sizable majority of the nation of 41 million backed integration with the EU. Building tensions. Key dates in Ukrainian-Russian relations. Date event 1918 Ukraine declares independence 1922 Ukraine becomes a republic within the Soviet Union 1991 It regains independence with the Soviet Union's collapse 2004 Orange Revolution annuls the rigged election of Russia-backed Viktor Yanukovych as president 2008 Ukraine applies to join NATO 2010 Yanukovych is elected president 2012 Ukraine, and the EU draft an agreement to foster closer ties 2013 Yanukovych rejects the EU deal, sparking mass protests February 2014 Yanukovych is overthrown March 2014 Russia seizes Crimea. April 2014 pro-Russia separatists begin seizing territory in eastern Ukraine. February 2022 Russia launches full-scale war on Ukraine. What led up to the war? Tensions have dominated relations between Moscow and Kiev since Ukraine's 2004 Orange Revolution, a bloodless revolt overturning the fraudulent election of Russia-backed Viktor Yanukovych as president. Yanukovych was nonetheless elected in 2010, but when he decided, under Kremlin pressure, to renege on a trade pact with the EU, mass demonstrations erupted and he was overthrown in February 2014. Putin, who accused the US and EU of instigating a fascist coup, responded with what was, until his full-out invasion of Ukraine, the most significant land grab in post-war Europe, the seizure and annexation of Crimea. Russia went on to back pro-Moscow separatist groups in Ukraine that proclaimed two independent republics in the eastern Donbass region along the Russian border, launching a conflict with the Ukrainian military that had claimed an estimated 14,000 lives before the wider war's eruption. How did Putin justify the full invasion? Putin and his allies accused Ukraine's government of genocide against ethnic Russians and native Russian speakers in the Donbass, an unfounded allegation wholly rejected by Ukraine as well as the US and EU states. Days before the invasion, Putin recognized the separatist self-styled republics, scuppering the Minsk Accords, peace deals brokered by Germany and France that sought to end the violence there through a political settlement. He said an objective of the invasion was the demilitarization of Ukraine. That would make it unable to join NATO, whose expansion into countries that were once within Russia's sphere of influence Putin views as an encroachment on its interests. He said another aim was the denazification of Ukraine. Why did Putin invoke Nazis? In part, it's a way of playing into the sacralized memory of the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. Beyond that, Russia has for years complained about political ultranationalism in Ukraine. To be sure, there is such a strain within Ukraine, and the Azov Regiment, a volunteer militia merged into the National Guard, still wears the medieval Wolfsangel insignia made infamous by Nazi German SS units. But Russia, whose complaint is tied to a history of Ukrainian nationalists collaborating with Germany in World War II in an effort to break free of the Soviet Union and create an independent state, exaggerates its significance. Ukraine's government is led by President Volodymyr Zelensky, who is of Jewish heritage. Many